melted together. I was wholly unconscious of what my body was resting on, or what was under my feet. I was borne this way and that on the wind, like dry chaff or leaves falling from a tree. In fact, I knew not whether the wind was riding on me or I on the wind. Now, you have not spent one whole season in your teacher's house, and yet you have lost patience 2 or 3 times already. Why, at this rate, the atmosphere will never support an atom of your body, and even the earth will be unequal to the weight of one of your limbs. How can you expect to walk in the void, or to be charioted on the wind?" Hearing this, Yin Shun was deeply ashamed. He could hardly trust himself to breathe, and it was long ere he ventured to utter another word. Mr. Fan had a son named 101, who succeeded in achieving great fame as an exponent of the black art, and the whole kingdom bowed down before him. He was in high favor with the Prince of Jin, taking no office but standing on par with the 3 ministers of state. Anyone on whom he turned a partial eye was marked out for distinction, while those of whom he spoke unfavorably were forthwith banished. People thronged his hall in the same way as they went to court. 101 used to encourage his followers to contend amongst themselves, so that the clever ones were always bullying the slow-witted, and the strong riding roughshod over the weak. Though this resulted in blows and wounds being dealt before his eyes, he was not in the habit of troubling about it. Day and night this sort of thing served as an amusement, and practically became a custom in the state. One day, Husheng and Sabo, 2 of Fan's leading disciples, set off on a journey, and, after traversing a stretch of wild country, they put up for the night in the hut of an old peasant named 101. During the night the 2 travelers conversed together, speaking of 101's reputation and influence, his power over life and death, and how he could make the rich man poor and the poor man rich. Now 101 was living on the border of starvation. He had crept round under the window and overheard this conversation. Accordingly, he borrowed some provisions and, shouldering his basket, set off for 101's establishment. This man's followers, however, were a worldly set, who wore silken garments and rode in high carriages and stalked about with their noses in the air. Seeing that 101 was a weak old man, with a weather-beaten face and clothes for no particular cut, they one and all despised him. Soon he became a regular target for their insults and ridicule, being hustled about and slapped on the back and what not. 101, however, never showed the least annoyance, and at last the disciples, having exhausted their wit on him in this way, grew tired of the fun. So, by way of a jest, they took the old man with them to the top of a cliff, and the word was passed round that whosoever dared to throw himself over would be rewarded with 100 ounces of silver. There was an eager response, and 101, in perfect good faith, was the first to leap over the edge, and lo! he was wafted down to earth like a bird on the wing, not a bone or muscle of his body being hurt. Mr. Fan's disciples, regarding this as a lucky chance, were merely surprised, but not yet moved to great wonder. They pointed to a bend in the foaming river below, saying, "There is a precious pearl at the bottom of that river, which can be had for the diving." 101 again acted on their suggestion and plunged in, and when he came out, sure enough, he held a pearl in his hand. Then, at last, The whole company began to suspect the truth, and 101 gave orders that an array of costly viands and silken raiment should be prepared. Then suddenly a great fire was kindled round the pile. "If you can walk through the midst of these flames," he said, "you are welcome to keep what you can get of these embroidered stuffs, be it much or little, as a reward." Without moving a muscle of his face, Shang-Chiu-Kai walked straight into the fire, and came back again with his garments unsoiled and his body unsinged. Mr. Fan and his disciples now realized that he was in possession of Tao, and all began to make their apologies, saying, "We did not know, sir, that you had Tao, and were only playing a trick on you. We insulted you, not knowing that you were a divine man. You have exposed our stupidity, our deafness, and our blindness. May we venture to ask what the great secret is?" "Secret I have none," replied Shang-Chiu-Kai. "Even in my own mind I have no clue as to the real cause. Nevertheless, there is one point in it all which I must try to explain to you. A short time ago, sir, 2 disciples of yours came and put up for the night in my hut. I heard them extolling Mr. Fan's powers, how he could dispense life and death at his will, and how he was able to make the rich man poor and the poor man rich. I believed this implicitly, and as the distance was not very great, I came hither. Having arrived, I unreservedly accepted as true all the statements made by your disciples, and was only afraid lest the opportunity might never come of putting them triumphantly to the proof. I knew not what part of space my body occupied, nor yet where danger lurked. My mind was simply one, and material objects thus offered no resistance. That is all. But now, having discovered that your disciples were deceiving me, my inner man is thrown into a state of doubt and perplexity, while outwardly my senses of sight and hearing reassert themselves. When I reflect that I have just had a providential escape from being drowned and burned to death, my heart within me freezes with horror, and my limbs tremble with fear. I shall never again have the courage to go near water or fire." From that time forth, when Mr. Fan's disciples happened to meet a beggar or a poor horse doctor on the road, so far from jeering at him, they would actually dismount and offer him a humble salute. 101 heard this story and told it to Confucius. "Is this so strange to you?" was the reply. "The man of perfect faith can extend his influence to inanimate things and disembodied spirits. He can move heaven and earth, and fly to the 6 cardinal points without encountering any hindrance. His powers are not confined to walking in perilous places and passing through water and fire. If Shang-Chiu-Kai, who put his faith in falsehoods, found no obstacle in external matter, how much more certainly will that be so when both parties are equally sincere? Young man, bear this in mind." In Shang-Chiu-Kai's case, though he himself was sincere, his master, Fan 101, was merely an impostor. The keeper of animals under King Xian of the Zhou dynasty had an assistant named Liang-Yang, who was skilled in the management of wild birds and beasts. When he fed them in their park enclosure, all the animals showed themselves tame and tractable, although they comprised tigers, wolves, eagles, and ospreys. Male and female freely propagated their kind, and their numbers multiplied. The different species lived promiscuously together, yet they never clawed nor bit one another. The king was afraid lest this man's secret should die with him, and commanded him to impart it to the keeper.